when I speak to groups, I say to them, you know, last night, when you lay down and you went to bed, you probably had some thoughts run through your mind about my actions tomorrow, or activities tomorrow, or what happened today. But I venture to say that not a one of you in the audience laid there and said, I wonder if I'm going to wake up in the morning with the same freedoms that I went to bed with. And you know, that happens all across the world, but not here. Why? Because we have these wonderful young men and women who volunteer for whatever reason. They volunteer and they allow us to live in this nation with these freedoms.
When the soldiers go off to war, the brass bands are beating, and people dig out their old uniforms, and the bunting is hung, and the flags are waved when they go off, and it's the proud young men, and it's so noble, and our hearts beat wildly with joy at their patriotic adventure. But when they come back, they're forgotten.
We put these young men and women in some of the most pressure-packed environments known to man. It's life and death. It's every moment. You live with the fact that you know that at any moment in time, your existence is wiped out.
I was telling the kids at the school, you can't unhear things, you know? You can't unsmell dead people, you know? You can't unsee kids on fire. I mean, you can't undo those things. You will never be the same. You will never go back to being the person you were before.
Just showing there was a saying that said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, because I'm the meanest son of a bitch in the valley. And that was a saying. And we believe that. We said it over and over again. Because if not, you become weak and afraid. You had to bolster emotionally that you were really a man. You were a man's man. I don't think it's any different today. We have a little different saying. But I still think that those who are in Afghanistan and Iraq have that same mindset, because if you don't, you go nuts. Because you can't live in fear. We all know that. If you live in fear, you just become ineffective in anything and everything in life.
I had to become a creature instead of a person. I had to become a monster in a way. I had to not feel, you know? I had to not feel things or delay feelings. You know, people, you get very close to everybody that you're fighting with. You know, the people in my platoon, we get very close to each other, closer than family. A dead person was just trash, and I couldn't pay attention to how they died, or, you know, I had to harden myself and compartmentalize that thing. And looking back, I can see my depression was extreme, because we only had one hot meal a month, and one change of clothes a month, and one bath a month, one shower a month. And we had to eat canned rations, and I ate only turkey loaf for 7 months. And the only thing that kept me going was, in the Army, I always carried tea with me instead of coffee, and I always made a cup of tea. And no matter what I had to endure during the day, if I could make a cup of tea in the evening, somehow that was a constancy that kept me tied to being a human being. Without that, I don't know how I would have ever lived.
But I compare the differences between myself. From the years of 18 to 22, I was getting my first apartment. I was having to hold my job. I was going to college and learning, you know, how to budget and save. And I screwed up a few times, and you know, and my folks were back there to help, you know, fill in those gaps. And you know, you learn how to manage credit, and you learn all these life skills, independence. And many of our veterans from 18 to 22 are out serving. They're in bunkers, they're under training programs, and it's very structured environment.
It wasn't until I went into the military that I find that There was discipline, there was structure, and I became a good soldier. So when I got out of the military, I went back to my old ways because I didn't know any better.
We just got from military straight into civilian. And the idea and the concept of Vietnam with all the protests. So being thrown into that, we had no idea on who was going to accept us, who was going to say thank you guys and women, thank you for a job well done. We didn't know that.
It was quite traumatic coming back from Vietnam, being told that you were baby killers and things like that, and then having to deal with society as a whole.
And I was cursed at, I was spit at, I was all the things that you hear that happened, and it happened to me that day. Now, I was shocked. I mean, I just came out of a combat zone.
I never thought I could ever come back to this world again. I never thought I could be part of the civilian world. After being there, war is a completely different world. That's why we used to say going back to the world meant coming back here. But when I got back here, then I found out that I didn't fit in anywhere. I felt like an alien being, you know, like this was almost my world, but not quite. The only thing that saved me was my little daughter. I was changing her diaper one day and she looked up at me and I could just see that she trusted me and loved me, and I just fell in love with her, and I knew that I couldn't go back to the war and leave her. And that's the only thing that kept me from going back to the war.